Does each Akatsuki member represent a motivation for war from Naruto? It makes sense that Naruto, one of the biggest anime and manga franchises in the world, would have nearly as many fan theories as it does episodes. However, this theory from YouTube commenter Halcyon postulates that each member of the villainous Akatsuki organization represents a different motivation for war. This theory is more than worthy of a deeper examination, and that's exactly what we're going to do on the Amagi today. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over if each Akatsuki member represents a motivation for war. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Let's start things off with the two Akatsuki that really established the organization in the series. Sasori and Deidara. Political change. Sasori and Deidara are the Akatsuki duo tasked with capturing Gaara right as the second half of the series kicks off. They're an odd pair of ninja mercenaries who seem like they'd be more at home talking about art theory in a gentrified coffee shop than performing a kidnapping. However, these eccentric artists have the potential to inflict more large-scale devastation than nearly any other member of the organization. Sasori is an immortal puppeteer who's capable of controlling a small army of uniquely terrifying puppets at any given time. And by unique, we mean that each puppet is a horrifying puzzle box packed with hidden weapons and difficult to pinpoint vulnerabilities. As these puppets can also be repaired much more easily than humans, Sasori is functionally an enduring army in and of himself. Deidara, on the other hand, thinks brief and striking explosions are more beautiful than any of Sasori's unaging puppets. As such, he fights with clay that he molds his chakra into, making them moving bombs. He does so using the unnerving and frankly gross mouths stitched to his palms. The variety of his explosives and impact behind them makes him a difficult fighter to predict, and someone who needs just a single opportunity to ensure his victory. Both of these ninja represent war as a means to change political structures. It's easy to draw a connection between Deidara's bombs and how fringe political groups have used explosives to incite fear and argue for reform across history. Sasori and his puppets represent the opposite side of a political structure, namely a monolithic organization that only benefits a single person or small group of people. Sasori is the tyrannical government, but Deidara is the group rebelling against that government. While these comparisons might be a little muddy, they're definitely there, and this is a fair reading of these characters. Thankfully, the symbolism in the other Akatsuki members is much clearer. Kakuzu. Money. Another unaging member of the Akatsuki, Kakuzu, is purely motivated by financial gain. He'll take on nearly any kind of job so long as there's a solid payout in it for him, and even eagerly accepts one where he has to assassinate strong targets. Doing so allows him to collect their hearts and transplant them inside of his own body, thereby prolonging his life and increasing his power. In case you're not familiar with world history, people have started a lot of wars over money. Sure, that money sometimes takes the form of valuable resources or trade routes that lead to later profits, but those are still fiscally motivated endeavors. Even if wars don't always start over financial issues, it often becomes a factor later on as both sides need to win to justify how much money they've spent on the combat. Of course, this is to say nothing about the relatively new war economy phenomenon. Private military companies and contractors are able to skirt a lot of the rules and regulations that formal armies have to follow. As such, governments will pay them top dollar for their services, meaning that some folks right now are perpetrating actions that lead to cycles of violence just so they can make a quick buck. Yeah, this is all a bummer. Let's switch to something less controversial. Religion. Hidan. Religion. Hidan is a weird guy even by Akatsuki standards. His religion, Jashin, makes him functionally immortal. He can shrug off smaller injuries and even completely recover from having his limbs severed, so long as he's stitched back together. He doesn't have any kind of secret weakness or fatal flaw either, he just cannot die. The most dangerous part of Hidan's unique abilities, though, is how he can transfer any damage inflicted on him to other people. When he draws the symbol of his religion on the ground, any damage inflicted on him while he's standing in it affects the attacker as well. This means that any effort to harm him is not only pointless, it's also potentially fatal. Hidan's connection to religion as a motivation for war is pretty clear, considering religion is his whole deal and only real way to fight. There's a long history of acts of violence being committed in the name of pretty much every dominant world religion. The leaders of those religions also throw their support behind these movements a good amount of the time. Holy wars are a whole ball of wax that we don't have the time or inclination to get into here, so let's move on to everyone's favorite Akatsuki. Itachi. Patriotism. Itachi is Sasuke's cooler, even more brooding older brother. He's one of the strongest Sharingan users in the entire franchise and responsible for a lot of the biggest events in the series. Sasuke and Itachi even managed to work out their baggage and express their love and appreciation for each other as siblings. Also, Itachi killed the entire Uchiha clan as part of a plot to prevent their uprising and a bloody civil war. Yeah. Itachi's clan was planning a coup against the government of the Hidden Leaf Village after they became second-class citizens due to rumors of their involvement in the Nine-Tailed Fox attack. Itachi disagreed with the coup and began reporting their efforts to the village's leadership. Once a peaceful solution seemed impossible, Itachi was ordered to exterminate the clan to prevent the village's destruction. There are a lot of real-world parallels to marginalized groups like the Uchiha being wrongly blamed for tragedy, and governments both manipulating and inflicting harm on them. We don't have to dig into those here, but Itachi's representation of a motivation for war is pretty on the nose. Kisame, exposing inequality and hypocrisy. Kisame was a member of the Land of Water's Elite 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist team. This meant that he was tasked with only the most elite missions and acted on the direct orders of the highest ranking people in his government. He found out pretty quickly though that those leaders didn't actually subscribe to the values they preached, and that they saw him as a disposable tool of violence and war. This eventually leads to Kisame defecting from his home nation and joining the Akatsuki after Obito, posing as Madara Uchiha, conveyed his plan to create an ideal world. Kisame's shark motif doesn't exactly fit into his representation of going to war to combat inequality and hypocrisy, but his background and character traits do. Kisame is kind of just a soldier. He dutifully and expertly carries out missions as ordered, because he believes that the people giving those orders have his and others' best interests in mind. When it turns out that isn't the case, he jumps ship and tries to create a world where soldiers like him are part of an ideal world. Plenty of conflict in human history arose due to frustrations with leadership and a feeling of being disrespected by those in power. This is a pretty sympathetic motivation, and even if Kisame's efforts usually put him against Naruto's heroes, he's one villain that's really hard to hate. After all, tons of pieces of media are dedicated to exploring how governments mistreat their troops, and a number of coups across history began with military forces feeling abused. Zetsu, lineage. Zetsu, one of the most visually striking members of the Akatsuki, has a distinctly bisected body and Venus flytrap theme. While the two halves of the entity known as Zetsu possess their own personalities, neither has a particularly high combat ability. As such, they mostly focus on reconnaissance and take on information-gathering missions. This is perfect for Black Zetsu, who's secretly the manifestation of Kage Otsutsuki's will. She is the final antagonist of Naruto and was trapped inside of the Ten Tails millennia before the main timeline began. Black Zetsu, then, spends the entire series slowly trying to create a situation where a compatible human becomes a vessel for the Ten Tails, and there's enough extra chakra present for Kaguya to revive through them. Through an unbelievable amount of lying and manipulation, he finally achieves that goal towards the end of the series. Zetsu's motivation for war is lineage, because Kaguya is made out to be the beginning of the first great ancestry in the Naruto universe. Her family would go on to form many of the clans present in the series, and she definitely sees herself as the rightful ruler of the Naruto world. In real life, there hasn't been too much bloodshed over a family's authority to rule lately, but we did a lot of that in the Middle Ages. Back when people thought kings and queens were literally ordained by God to rule over a nation, these kinds of wars were pretty common. Back then, as soon as one feud ended, another was close to starting, making it difficult to know any kind of true peace. Pain and Konan. Peace. Speaking of, the leaders of the first iteration of the Akatsuki, Pain and Konan, are primarily motivated by their desire to end conflict in the ninja world. Growing up as war orphans, they saw firsthand the devastation battles can have on innocent bystanders and uninvolved communities. Now adults, with access to powerful Rinnegan and unique paper techniques respectively, the two tried to end all conflict in Naruto's world. Of course, they did try to do this by becoming the draconian rulers of said world, which maybe wasn't as morally justified a plan as they thought. They fully believe that their ends justify their means, and that they're still in the right when they do abhorrent things like slaying their former teacher, Jiraiya. Considering how much they've lost at the hands of the generational violence that colors Naruto's world, they've decided that amassing power and control through violence is the only way that can create a temporary kind of peace. Third-party military groups rising up during prolonged military engagements is a fairly well-known phenomenon. Whether they be opportunists or representatives of groups disenfranchised by the conflict is up in the air, but a lot of people have gone to war for the sake of just ending the conflict. Pain and Konan pretty clearly embody this motivation. Obito and Madara, idealism and imperialism. Obito and Madara, these shadowy figures manipulating the Akatsuki behind the scenes, did so for the sake of their Eye of the Moon plan. This plan would have placed the entire world in a dreamlike state, ensuring world peace while also robbing everyone of their freedom. These two powerful members of the Uchiha clan were successful in executing their plan, but ultimately didn't get what they wanted thanks to their own meddling and Kaguya's interference. Seriously, both of them suffered some of the biggest monkey's paw curls in the history of anime and manga. Generously, we could say that Obito and Madara are motivated by their ideology here, and represent that inspiration for war. They do certainly believe that their solution to generational violence is correct and have suffered enough under the current system to know that it needs to change. With this reading, these two characters are fairly sympathetic and their actions seemingly justified. However, another reading of the two paints them as representatives of imperialism. After all, they subjugate others to their will haphazardly, even when there are other solutions available. They forced their beliefs onto others and believed that their societal system was the only correct one, and harmed loads of innocent people to establish and enforce that system. There's a long and troubling history of imperialism in the world, especially in the case of Western nations trying to subjugate less developed parts of the world. Violence and espionage were routinely used to force a powerful nation's values onto a smaller one. It's all rather depressing, but definitely worth looking into if you'd like to see why the most powerful countries in the world are far from the most moral nation states. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.